Welcome everyone to another wonderful day and another wonderful podcast. Can you believe it? We've been doing this now for some time, and I keep on saying the boring old things. Welcome every day. What a wonderful day. Anyway, it works for me anyway. And we have the most wonderful Jewel Homan right here with us today. Welcome, Jewel. How are you today?
I am so good. I mean, before we hopped on, I had some tech issues, and you were so gracious and welcoming and accepting, and I just already feel so jazzed to talk to you today. So thank you
Well,
for
don't
that. I'm
worry.
really excited to be
I
here.
totally understand from the tech point of view. As a tech man myself, I know what it can be like. So trust me, your windmill of a laptop. I've been there before. I totally understand. Yeah, she has this thing and it's powered by windmill. But
That's how
we've
old it is.
yeah, exactly. We've all been there, but it's working now. So, and as you can see, you can hear her lovely voice. So, what she's going to do for us now, she's going to say exactly what she's doing now from work wise. And we're going to go with the flow and see how we go from there. Jules, just lead us into the situation of what you're doing now.
Yes. So what I'm doing now, so for over 4 years now, I have been working with people. I say that I am a social confidence and connection coach. So I help people enjoy being themselves, feel comfortable in social settings, and create meaningful connections through conversation and meaningful friendships. There is a lot of science to this. I'm very much an evidence-based practice person. I worked in a psych lab in my undergrad. I have a degree in psychology and sociology. I'm getting my master's in this now, so that way I can help on more of a systemic level. But for the past 4 years, I have had the privilege of working with people all over the world to help them feel good in social settings, enjoy it. I like to say to unshore friendship and to make it fun again and to have more meaningfulness
Uh,
in their bonds. So that is what I do.
that sounds beautiful, I must admit. So, how did you get to this stage of helping people from social settings? How did those beginnings come along? What made you think, I'm going to help free people from their bonds of lack of sociability?
Yeah. So by struggling with it truly myself, now I never identified as having social anxiety because I always felt like I could perform socially, right? I
Mm.
can perform, I can be fine. I didn't really get super anxious with strangers, but I got anxious with people that I knew. And what would happen would be I would be at a bonfire or a friend's birthday party or even just at work, and I would overthink everything that I was going to say. I was constantly looking to try to get the right reaction at the right time from people to make sure I said the right thing in the right way. And I hinged my entire self worth on people's reactions to me, even their micro expressions, their small reactions to me. And I didn't, again, identify as having social anxiety. I didn't understand what this was. I just thought maybe I'm insecure. Maybe I just have a hard time connecting with people.
Hmm.
But I was always told, oh, it'll get better as you get older. It'll get better as you get older. And now, in the last like year of my 20s, I can honestly say getting older is not what made it better. What made it better was learning these skills. So when I left college and I started traveling and I started working, I was like, this is not getting any better for me. I'm still anxious. I have amazing friends, but I don't feel close to them.
Hmm.
I was like, I need to figure this out. At the time as well, my friend group was spreading out as it happens. They were getting married, having kids, moving, diving into these demanding careers. And so my friend group also really changed. And I had
Hmm.
no idea how to make a new friend as an adult. So I decided I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. And so I truly just started researching this for me, myself, and I. I was actually
Okay.
really embarrassed about it in the beginning. And after learning about the research and really applying it to my life and to myself, I had people come up to me and they were like, "How did you get so confident? How did you make those friends? Can I join your girls trips? Like what are you doing?" And I had known, like I had seen the stats. I knew that people were lonely. This is before the pandemic. I knew that before the pandemic, people were lonely. They were craving more meaningful friendships and relationships. That loneliness has been linearly increasing since the 1970s.
Hmm.
But when people started saying that to me, those stats became real people. And I was like, I knew it wasn't just me logically, but now I deeply knew, oh, this is not just me. And I don't want people to have this for the rest of their lives, for to not know that there are like skills that they can incorporate and things that they can do so that way they can feel more meaningfully connected.
No, yeah, that's a lot of information you got there. And do you know what? You've shown so much of your journey to have this strength where you weren't social at all. And then you had to make a big change within your life because obviously everyone was going their separate ways. That's very difficult to come from, especially when you're set in your ways, used to your environment, and those big changes had to be taken. Now, you obviously made the plunge, you obviously studied how to go forward and be positive and to be more sociable. But what gave you the strength to be able to do that? Because most people couldn't do that because they're so inward and so awkward within their own skin. What gave you that strength to be able to forge forward and then come across from other people like, oh God, I want to be like you. You're so open and etc. What happened?
Truthfully, and if somebody is in that position where they are like, I am doing that, I am beating myself up, they're not going to want to hear this, but this is the truth. Truthfully, what I did was I stopped trying to get rid of the anxiety I felt after spending time with people or the
Hmm.
anxiety I felt to perform correctly. I let it be there and I started practicing. Okay, I'm going to spend more time with people, put myself in these situations. Because truthfully, what happens when you are feeling insecure, at least for me, and what I see with a lot of my clients, is we'll be really graspy and we'll fill our social calendars for a minute and then we will avoid people for a while. And so I was like, okay, we're going to be consistent. We're going to practice this. And I'm going to go and I'm going to let the anxiety be there. I'm going to let the overthinking be there. And I'm going to talk to myself nurturingly when it comes up. I'm going to be accepting of myself. I'm going to be kind to myself. Nobody like originally wants to hear that because they're like, no, tell me how to make it go away. But
Mm.
truthfully, you empower yourself so much by being like, this, letting this be here, this human part of me, this isn't a problem. It's kind of like, so I live in Michigan
Okay.
and it's cold here. We are known for having a lot of snow the majority of the year.
Hmm.
And when you walk outside and it's cold and you start shivering, right, that's your body resisting the cold, of course, as it does, as it thinks it needs to keep you alive. So you start shivering, but that starts to hurt after a while, like shaking your bones in your body like that.
Without
But if you just let yourself like breathe and just let yourself be cold and not shiver, it doesn't hurt and you can start to relax. Now we are able to do this because a lot of times if we just let ourselves be cold, we're not actually worried about getting hypothermia because we're just, waiting outside for a second. You know what I mean? It's not like we are, uh, living in cabins here where we need
hmm
to keep that survival exercise up. And the same goes with social anxiety. When we let it be there,
hmm
and we stop like resisting it with like, oh no, stop thinking that, or I should just pretend I'm not anxious. When we let it be there, it's almost like telling your nervous system, oh, everything is actually okay here. We don't need to step into like a survival state. We don't need to resist this. Like we are okay.
Wow. And do you know what? That is amazing. That's the opposite of what everybody else says, as you've said. And it is the opposite what everyone. So just embrace who you are, basically what you're saying. It is what it is, and it's okay being awkward and being difficult. But if you don't attack the situation and be in that situation, you will never know how to cope within that
Yes.
situation. And that's just absolutely amazing. Okay, so I want to get into the fundamentals of who Jules is and how she's got here. So let's just go back. You had these social anxiety issues. Where did those beginning of those issues happen? How far back do we have to go before you pin where you were conscious that you had
Mhm.
this issue? Maybe
Mhm.
it would happen in your teens, maybe you were just 3 years old. Where did those come along, and what happened?
So, and I will say too about the, like you said, the coping, the
Mhm.
research that supports this, a lot of it was based in, there's two doctors, Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, that
Okay.
talk about this a lot. A lot of times, social anxiety isn't that we can't like put on confidence or be confident, but a lot of times it's, oh, I don't know how to be like a soft space for myself to land. I don't know how to be compassionate with myself. I know
Okay.
I'm gonna be hard on myself. So, and I think I started noticing that. I mean, I think it goes really far back. I think when I was really conscious of it was probably in like probably preteen, late childhood.
Uh-huh.
I was very shy and very quiet. And people often tell me now, they're like, I don't believe that. And I'm like, no, I really was. I was very quiet. I was very mute in a lot of settings. And it was because I was so afraid of being, judged even
Mm,
at that age. And I think that that comes from my background. And I think with so many people, it can come from their background. And what I mean by background is my home life. I grew up. Now there's a bug here. We're just doing great. The computer's not working. There's a bug somehow in the house. But I grew up like so many people do in like a dysfunctional home life and being constantly criticized, belittled, shamed. I think that's when it really started for me. And I
mm,
will say, I do not help people with trauma. And I do think it's helpful to, with trauma like that or past childhood experiences, I
mm,
really recommend them to go to a professional that's trained in that. I help people develop skills to be comfortable in social settings, but and to create meaningful friendships. But that kind of trauma was something I had been working through it throughout years and years of
mm,
therapy.
mm.
Yeah.
So obviously this is where it stemmed from, and that was very difficult for you. We also spoke about that you've got some form of neurodivergence, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so you had to deal with these negativity traits and the family life that was happening, and that was very difficult. But you also had to deal with also the neurodivergence. What neurodivergence do you have?
I have ADHD.
Mm,
I was telling you earlier, I was lucky to get diagnosed at a young age. Most of the time, women do not get diagnosed in the States until much later on in life. So I was lucky to be diagnosed. And dealing with that, they say that ADHD has what's called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where we are constantly looking for how we are rejected as well.
mhm, mhm,
And that is something that I really had to, again, learn how to cope with, be there for myself and supportive
mm.
of it. It was almost like another layer on top of my insecurities and anxiety.
Yeah, that was very difficult. So for you to be diagnosed or be in a position that to be tested, there must have been certain things that were seen. So when did this all begin? When certain traits were showing where, okay, there's a so-called issue here.
Hmm.
It's happening. What things were happening within your life that made you think "Well, something's not right, or your parents think something's not right? So just tell us more about that little bit of background.
Yeah, so I was in the second grade when I was tested and diagnosed, and I remember feeling, and this is how I felt. I remember feeling slower than my classmates. Like it took me a longer time to, if the teacher asked a question at the front of the class,
Uh-huh.
for me to process it. And that's one thing that we do that I know now about ADHD is we do have a lightly slower processing speed. But so I remember moments like that. I remember I have the type of ADHD that's more, some people call it ADD, like attention deficit disorder.
Hmm.
Now they're all grouped together just to, make it confusing for everybody. But I, so my ADHD is hypoactive, where there isn't like enough stimulation to get going. And so I think at that time, it's hard to say again. I was 7 years old, so it was over 21 years ago.
Hmm.
But I think daydreaming a lot is what brought it to my teachers, uh, is what alerted my teachers how
Hmm.
often I was daydreaming and not focusing in class. I think that's what really brought it to her attention.
Mm. And it was a very difficult time for you because I suppose with that comes isolation. Um, I suppose you felt so much different from anybody else, quite unique, but not from your point of view, a positive, unique. And
Yeah.
and that must have been really difficult. How did you really feel with all those things going on, feeling so different, feeling isolated? Um, and I suppose it was a situation you didn't. Did you have anyone that you could really communicate with what was going on, or was you still again isolated with that?
I appreciate that question. So, and I will say it was difficult from the point of view, my siblings are not neurodivergent. They're very neurotypical. They're actually almost like genius level. Not that neurodivergence can also be genius level, but my siblings, were very much the opposite of me, where they picked up on things really quickly. It would
Mm,
take me 3 hours to do homework and then one. And so we'd be sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, and I remember being like, oh, why I made it mean all of these things about me that it didn't mean. Like, why am I not smart like my siblings?
mm,
I was often taken out of class to get help or to take testing in other rooms because I couldn't focus on a test. I just wouldn't complete a test if I was in that room,
okay.
even if I knew the information. And I do wish it was explained to me or that there were conversations with me about it because truthfully, nobody did tell me what was going on. It wasn't until I was reaching high school and then college where I was like, oh, this is what I have. And I want to learn best about how to work with my own brain.
Mm,
But it wasn't really explained to me. I will say, because of my upbringing with my home life and with all of the, again, belittling, shaming, criticism, that
mm,
we were always, all of us siblings were on edge. We were on our toes all of the time, like wondering when the next shoe was going to drop. That I knew I couldn't rely on my family for
mm,
support or to feel seen. And it was when in middle school when I created my first like deep, meaningful friendship, I really think that got me through living there and at that
mm,
childhood home and got me through that rough time. And I think also that's a big reason why when I was an adult, I was like, well, I can't rely on my family. Like a
mm.
lot of people are able to rely on their family, go back to their family.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why I got into what I do in the first place, too, because I was like, there's got to be a way for me to create my own.
Okay, so your first support system was what exactly?
Um, my childhood friend Nick, we are still friends to this day.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, he was the first friend in middle school. We were 12 years old that I felt really comfortable with.
Mm.
And he also has the same type of ADHD that I have.
Ah.
And so he was struggling with the same things actually of spacing out, of struggling with school, of it taking him way longer to do things, of him not being able to initiate tasks because there was no stimulation
Mhm.
behind it.
Mm.
So it's funny. I never actually thought about that before this conversation, but yeah, I think, really bonded over that common experience.
Yeah, because to be honest, I mean, it's different for everybody. And
Hmm.
this is not just down to neurodivergent people. It's we all go through our trials and tribulations in life, and we all have a support system, but it comes in different forms. Um, there will be some form of support system, but in your case, it was a friend. Usually it's family, but not in your case. Um, and it's really interesting to know. And I'm really glad you had that support system because actually he was a significant point in your life for you to actually get to this stage in your life and especially to be more sociable because and it's great that you still have that relationship from way back in the days because that's a very rare thing for people to actually have close relationships still with, secondary school or primary school, whatever you want to call it. And I'm really glad that you're in that position. So you had that support system, and you've made it through the stages where you're far more confident, found a system that actually works with your social anxiety, which is amazing because what you've done, you've actually flipped it on its head. You've done the opposite of what most people or what society says you need to do to get over to your anxiety. And to be honest, when I listen to you, it's actually an easy system, or it's not an easy system. It's an easier system that you use than having to, hey, just sup it up. You're better
Yeah.
than that. You can do this. You can do that. What you're basically saying. It is what it is.
Hmm.
You take that with you in that situation, and you go with the flow. You're not trying to fight against this entity.
Yeah.
I think it's a stroke of genius, and I can
Yeah.
see how, that works. I can see how that works. Really,
It's so helpful. And obviously, this is a way oversimplified
yeah.
way of speaking about it. There are certain structures and things that I teach
Mhm.
clients, but truthfully, I do want everyone to know that because we are told, suck it up, fight it, right? Like power through. No one wants to do that when it comes to connection.
Mhm.
Maybe they want to do that for like a workout, but who wants to go connect with people with like powering through, right? It doesn't exactly make sense. And doing it truly over time as well, because now I've been doing this for years and years, and I've been practicing this for years and years to the point where it's really just become part of who I am and how I operate in the world.
Mhm.
And so I will say, recently I spoke at an event in front of hundreds of women. And I didn't have a single thought when I left. I got in my car as I normally did. I didn't have a single thought of, oh, I should have done that differently.
Mm.
I didn't have a single thought. Now, again, I've been practicing this for years and years. I've been helping clients every single week do this for years and years. But, and it's not even that not having the anxiety was the success, but I just want everyone to know like this works, and I built skills around it, right? I built so much space around the anxiety, around the insecurities, that now it really feels like a pebble in a pond
Mm.
compared to a big boulder in a small fish tank. Whereas that's how it used to feel for me. And it's not that I don't have any anxiety ever. I like to joke that Beyonce has anxiety. It doesn't matter how talented you are or how
That's true.
confident you are.
Yeah, yeah. We come in
uh,
different forms.
exactly.
Yeah,
But it's the space
totally.
around it, the skills around it that um, have really helped me, have really helped my clients. And truthfully, also, the research really supports that. Social anxiety, a lot of times, it's not a confidence issue, it's a self-esteem issue. Where confidence, it's like, oh, I can be confident in my ability to do this interview. I could be confident in my ability to be a basketball player. I could be confident in my ability to do this. I could be confident in my ability to present at work. But social anxiety so often is related to the inner critic that's like, oh, that wasn't good enough. You should have done that better. You
Mm,
need to be better. It's a lot of social perfectionism.
mm.
And when we create a softer place to land within ourselves, we increase our self esteem, almost like our self forgiveness, and we grow space around that anxiety and are able to cope more with it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of anxiety when it came to showing my face and using my voice years ago, and I decided a year and a half ago I would attack that anxiety. And I did a few things to go through the process to get over that. And I could never do a podcast. But what I learned is to accept that it's okay to make it, mistakes.
Yeah.
Uh, And what I also, and this is a thing that I teach my clients, but I have a problem teaching myself. We're very good at speaking to others, right? But trying to walk our own walk is very difficult. And it was a situation where, I would say to people, it's okay to make a mistake. It's actually the most important thing to do before you do anything else, because you can't be great or better at something until you make the mistakes. So the faster you make those individual mistakes, the faster you get to progression and to get into your goal. And I started to walk that walk, and it's I just embrace it, and it becomes
Mhm.
so much easier, right? So I do appreciate your system, the way it works, and it is a form of simplicity. Now, the situation is, I know we've been speaking about it. I try to simplify things so people understand a whole process, and I have simplified your process, what you're talking about. But as you said before, there are how can I say, frameworks, systems you add to that simplification when you're teaching your clients.
Mhm.
Could you just give us some examples when it comes to what do you put within the process when you're speaking to your clients? Give us a for instance.
Yeah, yeah. So there are actually, well, okay, there's a couple things I want to say. Social anxiety, again, because it's a self-esteem issue,
Hmm.
there's also something that Dr. Hendrickson calls the reveal. So
Hmm.
this also very much relates to imposter syndrome, but it's I'm afraid that this will be revealed. I'm afraid that other people will see this thing about me that I am insecure about or think. So for me, growing up in the environment that I grew up, just in general, my own brand of insecurity was honestly that I'm slow, that I'm not smart. I
Hmm.
was afraid people wouldn't see or would see that I'm not smart.
Hmm.
And so that's the thing I was afraid would be revealed. And so when I would talk to people, I often, if I did talk to people, I'd often keep my opinions to myself and ironically not share my
Hmm.
knowledge. So that was one brand. I have clients that often they think something is wrong with the fact that they have anxiety in the first place. And so their reveal is, oh, they will see that I'm anxious. And we are afraid that other people will see these things because then we think, oh, they will not value me.
Hmm.
I will not be enough.
Hmm.
I will not be worthy to connect with them or even worthy to work with them if they're my coworker or worthy to be accepted in this space if they see this thing about me. So making peace with whatever it is, and sometimes it's more than one. I had more than one
Hmm.
things that I was afraid would be revealed to other people. But even just anybody asking themselves and pausing just to ask, like, what is the thing I'm afraid others will think about me? What is the thing I'm afraid will be revealed?
Hmm.
And learning how to create compassion around that, acceptance around that. There's this analogy that I love that I got from Matthew Hussey. And it is, here are the ingredients of my life. I had this childhood. I have this brain. I have this, neurospice, this neurodivergence. I have this body. I have whatever it may be, right? I was born here. We have these ingredients in our lives. And instead of being like, I hate these ingredients suck, I don't want to do anything with them, I'm ashamed of them, I'm even going to hide some of them away.
Uh-huh.
Instead, we could look at these ingredients and be like, how can I be the best chef that I can be? How can I make the most scrumptious and delicious meal with these ingredients? So it's because a lot of times people are afraid to step into this acceptance around whatever it is that they don't want to be revealed. But for me, truthfully, and I've never said this out loud before, but I think my ADHD was the thing I was afraid would be revealed to other people.
Ah.
And truthfully, accepting that has radically shifted my confidence, being there for that, knowing that is just how my brain works. And it doesn't mean that I'm not worthy, right? And trusting other people aren't going to think that means I'm not worthy. And if they do, they're not my people, which is something we need to practice. It's easier said than done originally, but creating acceptance for that, it doesn't mean I have to love it, right? There are
Mhm.
times when I am staring at my work and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to prioritize. I don't have to love every single thing about me having ADHD,
Mhm.
but if I can accept it, create peace around it, it's so much easier to work with it, to again grow our space around it so that way it can feel like a pebble in a pond rather than a boulder in a fishbowl.
Yeah, you're totally right. Acceptance is very, very important. And what I say to my clients when it comes to acceptance is that we're not supposed to be so-called perfect. And we mustn't be perfect, otherwise we'll all be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And perfection is your point of view, is your perspective, it's how you see things. So accepting your imperfections are very important because they what make you the unique person you are. So it is okay from your point of view that
Mm-hmm.
that may be a negative part, but that negative part is what's people love about you, whether you love it or not. It's what makes you you. Um, and I think once people hear it from that point of view, it's all to do with perception. As much as we don't like certain things, other people will like those things about you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. And I think as well, this is also helpful for social anxiety, but it also very much relates to what you just said. It almost like kind of helps wrangle the inner critic or that part of us that criticize that is looking for us to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Hendrickson came up with 3 questions that are really helpful for wrangling the inner critic, for shifting our perception, as you just said, reframing.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of times when we are feeling anxious, whether it's after a social event or even before, or just in general. Oh, we could be anxious because, oh, they are totally judging me,
Mm-hmm.
like after an event or before an event. Oh, for me, they're going to totally see that I'm not smart, that I'm stupid, right? I'm afraid of my reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And then these 3 questions can really help wrangle that. And one is, how bad would it really be specifically? Or in other words, what's the worst thing that could happen? This sounds counterintuitive, but it's really, again, like taking a breath and exhaling and letting us shiver instead of continuing to shiver, right?
Mm-hmm.
What your brain's already going there to what's the worst that's going to happen. So asking it, wrangling it in a little bit of, okay, what's the worst thing that happens if they think that I'm not smart? How bad would it really be specifically?
Mm,
Because if we let our brains just run with it, it's just going to make the anxiety bigger. And it's going to be like, well,
mm,
then they're going to tell other people and they're going to tell other people. And then everyone's going to think that I'm not smart and I'm never going to get any career opportunities. And this will be my life forever. I'll be stuck, living in my mom's basement.
mm, mm. I hear you.
Right? Rather than, oh, how bad would it really be specifically? What's the worst case scenario? Like, truly? Oh, they have a judgment about me. And that's it.
It's true. It's true. And life does not stop.
And life does not stop.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And, especially when you're on the internet, everything is hidden. And,
Hmm.
but there's certain things that are open. But, you know, you may go be part of a group, um, but that group is literally 0.0000000% of the internet. No one else
Yeah.
knows what you did, what you said, whatever. So you may be the don, you may be the most popular, or you may be the worst person on the planet within that corner. But it's not it's not like, when you walk out in the street and everybody can see you and they know where you live, and you're walking past the shops and everyone sees you every day. Literally, the internet is just full of hidden crevices, and it's so vast, but people don't appreciate it because you go to one web page, then you go to the next, and then you're in that room, and that is it. Yet
Hmm.
there are billions and billions and billions of other spaces and rooms out there. So if you make a mistake, honestly, it's not going to be the end of the world. And if
Right.
and if at the end of the day you become the greatest thing since sliced toast, there are far more opportunities to go further beyond. It's
Yeah.
so vast. So in real times, listeners, what we're saying is, you make a mistake. It is important to make a mistake because you cannot master a process or be better unless you make a mistake. It's okay to do that. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. And everything that you just said confronts too of something we are very afraid of. And that is we are afraid of being rejected. And this fear goes so deep,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Almost as if like we're afraid, oh, if I'm rejected, right? Our brains are, I like to joke around and say our brains are a little dramatic. Be like, oh, I'm always going to be rejected. I'm never going to have any friends. And so what you just said in your example is so true and so helpful. Like, no, there are other spaces. There are other spaces.
Yeah.
So that first question, how bad would it be specifically? Like in everything you just said, okay, manageable, not that bad.
Yeah.
The second question that really wrangles the inner critic is what are the odds? So let's say the worst case scenario for somebody is they make a mistake on the internet and some people see it and, maybe they're harsh about it. Then also, like, what are the odds of that happening? Right? What are
Mm,
the odds? Because a lot of times, again, our brain, especially when we are full of anxiety, will make it bigger and bigger.
mm,
And so a lot of this is like wrangling in these first two questions. How bad would it really be specifically? What's the worst case scenario? And then what are the odds? The last question, after you kind of wrangle the brain in the first two,
mhm,
the last question is how would you cope? And that is where I give my clients a lot of strategies. They're all based in self acceptance, like we've talked about today, for them to cope and know, oh, okay, I'm going to be there for myself. I'm going to be supportive of myself. I'm going to have a good self esteem regardless.
Wow, that's beautiful. Now we're going to finish off, and I would love to speak to you on hours, but that's not possible because obviously you've got to meet a very important client, and I've got to be elsewhere. But it would be nice to talk again because there's so
Absolutely.
much to talk about. I can feel this rabbit hole, right? you can feel it, can't you, Jules?
I
Um,
can. I'd love to talk to you longer, for sure.
yeah, it's true, it's true. So we'll have to do that another time. Now, before we finish it off, Jules, is there anything you want to say to the listeners that we may have missed some important things? Is there anything you want to say?
I think, and we didn't really dive into friendship, which I want to say too, I'm also grateful for, because I don't get me wrong, I love talking about friendship. I just taught a workshop on it this past weekend. But diving into the social anxiety was really, really fun for me. A lot of times people tend to want to overskip that. The last thing that I would want people to know, and this goes too for neurodivergent or not, but also I think for a lot of neurodivergence, this can feel stronger at times, but to understand that our world is becoming more socially anxious. 1 in 3 people in the States report that they struggle with social anxiety.
Mm,
Social anxiety has started to become our new normal. And again, I never identified as having social anxiety. I mean, sure, I was really shy when I was younger, but when I was in high school and in college, I could socially perform. And I was anxious about my relationships. I was anxious about what people thought of me. I was overthinking in
mm,
that way.
mm,
And so, what I would want people to know to really grow their space around this rock that is social anxiety, to start accepting it more, is to note that a lot of social media is, we're not just comparing ourselves to more people, we're also more exposed to other people's opinions.
mm,
And we're even exposed to more of what our friends are doing. Like we might see a friend online going to catch up and have a dinner with a friend.
mhm,
And even though we might do the same thing and have those catch up dinners, by seeing that over and over again online of, oh, these friends are getting together, these friends are getting together, that can stir up social anxiety, relational anxiety of, oh my gosh, am I being left out? Have I talked to them in a while? So I just want everybody to kind of exhale and, apply what we talked about today to be more accepting, more compassionate with any kind of social anxiety that they might be experiencing, because truthfully, the structures and the systems that we have in place today are making it worse for everybody, no
mm.
matter your age, and honestly, all over the world. So
I agree with you. No, I agree with you, Jules. And with that said, unfortunately, we have to go. Jules, thank you for being with us, and maybe we can do this another time and actually jump down the rabbit hole. What do you
I
think?
would love that. I
Yeah?
would love that. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Oh, totally. Our pleasure. And listeners, we will speak to you again very soon. In the meantime, sayonara.